and a sick Indian dog comes out of the darkness, jumps on my leg and starts fucking my leg. I'm completely freaked out. His eyes are running, the fur had fallen off. It was disgusting. I felt that I was going to get rabies. I didn't know what to do. I start running through the night. This dog is hanging onto my leg. He thought it was some kind of foreplay. I'm running through the night. I find this street, and as I come running, I see this great big gate there. There are no walls on either side, just a gate. And as I'm running down there, a guard comes out, and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Get this fucking dog off my leg." He picks up a stone, and the dog is gone. That was my entry into Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh Ashram, Pune. And then I did my first dynamic there, which was really very beautiful. And then my first discourse. When I first met Osho, I can't describe the impact it had. I'd never seen a man like that. I never knew a man could be like that. And when he came out, first of all, I'm sitting on this floor, it's polished marble, like sitting on the floor. I'd never sat on the floor before. And there were not many people there, about 30 people sitting. Some of them are sitting on shawls, some are sitting on the floor, and I didn't know what to do. I just sit on the floor.
It was on the back porch.
Yeah. No, it wasn't the back porch. It was in... Changchutsu. And as he came out, it was so magical. There were no walls. There were birds flying in and out. I could smell the flowers. It was another world for me. And then suddenly, in the doorway, is Osho standing there with a robe on that was so white it hurt my eyes. It was so brilliantly white. His head was shining like it was made of gold. He moved in a way I'd never seen anybody move like that. I couldn't see his feet moving. It was as if he was on wheels. Gliding across the floor, namasteing and smiling, and then he sat in the chair. And he was speaking in Hindi, which I didn't know at that time. I don't mean I didn't know Hindi, I didn't know he was speaking in Hindi. So as he sat in the chair, there was an Englishman there with a long microphone, and he was setting things up for Bhagwan. 3 birds came in and sat on the arm of the microphone as Bhagwan is speaking. These 3 little birds are sitting there, singing away like crazy. He paid no attention to them. He started talking, the birds are singing, there were birds flying in, sitting on the chandeliers. It was so magical for me. I was completely transported. He was speaking in Hindi. I didn't understand a word. I could just sit there looking at him. And his eyebrows, I was fascinated by his eyebrows. His eyebrows used to dance up and down as he was speaking, and he would use his hands in particular ways. And he would create laughter among the people who were listening to him. And he would play with that energy. First there'd be a little chuckle. They would begin chuckling. Then they'd begin laughing. Then they'd begin knocking each other. The Indian people, when they get really into their laughter, they've got to include everybody. They're falling all over the floor. They were laughing at what Osho was saying. It was so funny to watch them. I was laughing too. Everybody was laughing. Now, the whole thing was a complete mind-blower for me. I thought there'd be some sense of holiness. There was an immense sense of beauty and spirituality, but no sense of seriousness or holiness, none of that stuff at all. It was wonderful. So when I came out, I asked somebody, where can I'd like to meet Bhagwan. And they said, well, you need to see Lakshmi. And I said, what, who? Is that a person? And they said, yes, it's his secretary. And you meet her in this building. And I came into this building, and there were 3 people sitting on the floor. And I said, I'm looking for Lakshmi. And they said, well, we're waiting for Lakshmi. And I said, what, sitting on the floor? They said, yes, we're waiting for Lakshmi. So I became the fourth one in the queue, sitting on the floor. And then this little bird-like, skinny creature came in with huge round eyes, dressed in a red, what looked like a nurse's outfit, and she had a kind of red nurse's hat on. And she probably wasn't 5 feet tall. And she said she was Lakshmi. She sat down. She spoke to each of those three people very briefly. And then she turned to me. She said, what's your name? I told her my name. And she said, do you meditate? I said, yes. And she said, do you do Bhagwan's meditations? I said, well, I do dynamic. So she burst out laughing. So I said, so then she said, do you want to take sannyas? And I said, well, I've got a guru. And she said, she then burst out laughing. And I said, I don't know if I want to take sannyas. So at that point, she then said, what's your profession? What do you do for a living? And I said, I'm a dentist. And she said, will you be our dentist? Like, it was so bizarre. And I burst out laughing and said, yes, I'll be your dentist. Little did I know.
But you saw you were there only for 4 weeks.
I was there for 3.5 weeks the first time. I can't tell you, so much happened in those 3.5 weeks.
So when did you go for the darshan?
When did I go to take sannyas? So she gave me an appointment 3 days' time. The second, I was now living in the Mobos Hotel, which was down the road. I had a room on the top. There were 3 rooms, 2 very big rooms and 1 dusty room in the corner. I had the dusty room in the corner. I fell in love with the woman who was, or that's what I thought at the time, with the woman who was in the next room. So
nice
I'd been there 24 hours. I fell in love with this Italian lady, and I can't remember, but she had a husband who was Scottish. That's all I remember. And then we were only lovers for a short time. And then I was doing dynamic and all of that. And on the second day, I went and rented a bicycle and all that stuff. And on the third day, the day that I was meant to meet Bhagwan in the evening, my mind was going bananas. I was like almost crazy, thinking, what's wrong with you? You've done every kind of meditation there is. You've already got a guru. What are you trying to do? Are you some kind of guru freak? I need a sign. I know nobody gets any signs. What sign? So as I go into discourse that day, I'm sitting there, as always, with Osho, a wonderful silence. And then as he left, as he turned his back to go out, he came very close to the edge of the marble where his chair was. A beam of light came through the trees, touched the back of his head, and it was exactly the same as my picture of the naked yogi in the orange void, with a beam of light touching his head, splitting into all the colors of the rainbow. That's when I took sannyas.
So you got message.
So that night, that was my sign. That night when he said, you want to take sannyas? Yes. And then he gave me the name Swami Devageet. That's how I came
Divine
to
song.
Divine harmony, he called
harmony.
it. Yeah, divine harmony, the song of the universe, the sound of silence.
So now, 30-something years later,
36 years
36 years later, so can you tell us, like briefly, about the books that you've done?
As a sannyasin, every day has been an incredible day. So it's very difficult to separate one part out from another part, but this part, okay. When Osho gave me this book to write, it was already after the American...
88, you say, 1988.
Yeah. And so, but for me, we were still in the aftermath of what had happened in America. And then, when he gave me this book to write, amusing anecdotes as his personal dentist, I'd never thought about the stories of what had happened with me as his dentist, you know, how it had affected, it had changed everything. Once I became his dentist, I had a particular kind of role in the ashram community. You know, there was a certain status, if you like, which was attached to me as his dentist, you know, like his doctor or his secretary. And when he asked me to write the stories, I then started thinking about what were those particular situations that affected me as his dentist, as opposed to just being a sannyasin there. Because there was so much happening as a sannyasin, but as his dentist. So to give a couple of examples, can I give a couple of examples? So for instance, so when I'm in Rajneeshpuram, it's early days, right? My back had gone out twice because I've been trying to be a young man, building and helping, and we've got a city to build. That was the motto in those days. And I'd been doing all kinds of things which my body couldn't really handle. So my back had gone out twice. So now I was working in the traffic coordination department with a guy called Tapadana, a woman called Venu, and we were negotiating, we were organizing the traffic. There was only one road into the ranch, from Antelope down to Rajneeshpuram, which wasn't Rajneeshpuram then, it was just called the Big Muddy.
Muddy Ranch.
But before that, after that, when Osho was there, it started to be called Rancho Rajneesh. It wasn't called that for very long, but at that time it was called Rancho Rajneesh. So between Antelope and Rancho Rajneesh was this narrow road, which wasn't really wide enough for two cars. And Osho would drive on this car every day, in the morning, in the afternoon. He used to drive so fast that we had an instruction, keep off the road. Keep off the road. When Osho's driving, get off that road. So I was there negotiating traffic, and every so many days I would have a job where I would leave the ranch and go and pick up stuff from Bend Airport or from different places in Madras. And we had a bunch of really shitty old cars in those days, but one was a nice old Volvo, and I liked driving this thing. So one day, soon after Osho had been there, I think this would be about September 1981, and I was driving this Volvo, just entering this road that connected Antelope to Rancho Rajneesh, and suddenly in the distance I see this dust cloud coming at tremendous speed. I knew, whoops, this is Bhagwan driving. So I pulled in, and under the shade of a big rock at the side there, what later became the airport, I pulled into that place. And then his car came hurtling past. And then I continued on my drive. Well, that afternoon, Vivek called me. Now, she hadn't called me up to that point, but I got a message, Vivek wants to see you. I had no idea what this was. And she said, why were you driving so fast? It completely took my breath away. I said, I wasn't, I was stopped. She said, you were driving too fast. I said, but I parked my car. She said, Devageet, you were driving too fast. And I didn't know what to say. I just said, well, if you say so, I was driving too fast. The very next day, I'm again in the blue Volvo, driving out. As I came to the top of the ranch, coming past Antelope, I see coming in the opposite direction a small pickup. And in the front of the pickup were three men and a woman. At the back of them were three rifles, you know, hooked in the back of the pickup, which wasn't unusual there. As they came past me, I thought, that woman looks just like Vivek. Can't be. I looked in my mirror, they came behind me, came up behind me, they circled round and then jammed me into the side of the road. The three men jumped out. Vivek jumps out. It was Vivek. She said, he's had an accident, he's had an accident. She's completely freaked out. And I said, what do you want me to do? She said, drive, we've got to go and get him. He won't leave the car, he's waiting. She was almost gibbering. So I get in this blue Volvo and I'm jamming my foot down on the accelerator. And she's saying, drive faster, drive faster. And I said, yesterday you're telling me I drive too fast. She said, just drive. And so I'm driving, and about 12 miles out, there was a tree overhanging the road, and there was a patch of black ice under that tree. It was already beginning to come winter. And from that black ice was maybe 50 meters of skid mark. And there, at the end of the skid mark, on a big rock, was this huge white Rolls Royce, about a meter off the ground, looked as if it was floating. Osho was sitting in it, meditating, completely still and silent. Vivek said, you've got to tell him he's got to get out, he's got to come back to Antelope. Now, I had never spoken to Osho in that way before. I had no idea how, so I could see she's in a complete panic. So I come to the door, I knock on the door. Without even opening his eyes, the window came sliding down, completely silently. It's a Rolls Royce, right? And he said, hello, Devageet. As if I hadn't seen him for 4 months personally. And I said, Bhagwan, the car is stuck on a rock. He said, yes, and this door won't open. So I'm trying the door and it's completely stuck. So I said, well, maybe you can come out of the other door. You need to come back in this other car with Vivek back to Antelope. So Vivek and I went round to the other door. It jammed against a 3 barbed wire fence about 2 yards from a river. It was only the fence that stopped the car. It was on top of this rock. And so Vivek and I pulled down the barbed wire. We stamped down all the stinging nettles. I open the door for him. He slides across the seat. He gives his hand to Vivek. He steps out of there as if he's the Queen of England stepping out of the royal carriage. It was wonderful. He walks through the stinging nettles, gets into my tacky old blue Volvo, and they've gone. Suddenly they've gone. And I'm there.
You're left behind.
Yeah, I'm there in the middle of nowhere. I've got a cowboy hat on, jeans and a down jacket, and a Rolls Royce, which is 1 meter suspended off the... It was so bizarre. But there was almost no traffic, right? So as one car came past, I saw the person look, and then he almost got a whiplash seeing this amazing sight. 2 cars came past, and I'm waiting there for Avesh to come and rescue the Rolls Royce. Then a small van came, and there were 2 small Mexican men. I know they're Mexican now. At the time I didn't. They just looked like 2 thin brown men. And they stopped the car, came out and said, hey man, you in trouble? I mean, there's my car, meet off the ground. And I said, well, I'm not really in trouble. I'm waiting for a pickup truck to come. And they said, oh, we can get your car off. So I look at these 2 skinny men, and I look at this car, which is immense. It was a bulletproof Rolls Royce. It weighed 9 tons. And they said, we can get it off. We'll get a tree and we'll lever it off. They opened the back of their van. 8 other men were in there. They all came out. There were now 10 of these guys. They cut down a tree. They start levering on this Rolls Royce. The tree, of course, breaks. They all fall over. They're all laughing and joking. It's like something out of Monty Python. They're all laughing and joking. And they say, sorry, man, can't help you. They all pile back in their van and they've gone. And like 5 minutes later, then comes Avesh with 2 big tow trucks, and they put these great big loops of material under the car. They lift it off, and they were gone. So now I'm just standing there in the middle of nowhere. They left me, and because they were taking it to Bend or wherever. It had ripped, that crash had ripped the whole of the transmission out of the Rolls Royce. I was waiting for somebody, and a little bit later...
But nothing happened to Osho?
nothing happened. Oh, Osho was absolutely, nothing ever happened to Osho. He was so wonderful. So what happened in that moment, I'm just standing there, and a little bit later, Osho's second driver came. I've forgotten his name, the Australian guy. Yeah, he came, and then he took me back to the ranch. Now that was my first meeting with Osho one-to-one. Well, that wasn't one-to-one, Vivek was there. And in Rajneeshpuram, I'm calling it Rajneeshpuram because it was Rancho Rajneesh at that time. And then later that day, I got a message from Vivek saying, why aren't you fitting up his dental room? I didn't know he had a dental room. I said, what dental room? I went to see her. I said, what dental room? She said, he's designed this trailer with a dental room in it. Well, that again blew my mind. Who designs a trailer with a dental room in it? So she took me into this very small room, which was, maybe about 10 feet by 8 feet. And she said, this is the dental room. It was right next to his big sitting room. And then she said, you need to get it equipped because we don't know when he's going to want his first dental session. Well, that was a slight problem because I was not qualified to work as a dentist in America at all. So I then I phoned, of course, to various dental companies, and I told them I wanted to buy this, buy this, buy this. I had great fun. Spending somebody else's money is fantastic, So their exercise, getting the very best dental equipment. America has fantastic dental equipment. So I got this wonderful dental equipment, and each time they would ask me, and who's the dentist that it's for? And I said, it's for me. And they said, what's your registration number? And I said, well, I'm not actually registered right now, but I will be taking the examination. So that was enough for them. After all, they're receiving my money, so they didn't care whether I'm registered or not. But they asked their questions, and then I then brought all this wonderful equipment back. It was so beautiful, I can't tell you. Now, while I was there, I realized that I could get what I used to use in England was a nitrous oxide analgesia machine, where you used it. I mainly used it on children, but it enables, for children, it enables them to be quiet and relaxed and much more receptive to the dentistry. I'd also used it for people who had asthma. Osho was an asthmatic. When I looked up and researched the use of nitrous oxide for asthma, it had been used for relieving acute childhood spasms of asthma. So I thought, well, Osho has asthma. Maybe I could use it for him, because I'd used it for everybody in England. So I got this equipment while I was buying my stuff. So when he came in, that first, that's another story. I'm just getting all this equipment together, and the room is beautiful, but he's going out in the morning and in the afternoon driving. We got the room ready, me and Ashu, who was the dental nurse, but we had other work to do. I was doing the traffic control, and she was doing cooking in the kitchen, and we didn't hear anything until somewhere at the late end of October. I was on breakfast duty. We were going down to Howdy Doody breakfast. And it was very early, maybe 6 o'clock in the morning. There was ice on the road. And as we were driving out in this big truck van thing, there were about 10 of us in this van. And then suddenly, as we were going to cross over the river, there used to be a bridge there. Suddenly, the guy jammed on his brakes. We all fall off the seats onto the floor. And he said, the bridge is gone. So I look, we come out, we all fall out of this car. What yesterday had been a little river, today was a roaring torrent. There were rocks and trees. It was a flash flood. I'd never seen anything like that. I didn't know it was a flash flood. Until later that day, somebody told me it's a flash flood. And that's why the land in Rajneeshpuram was so pitted and scarred with all these valleys and arroyos, I think they called them. Anyway, there we were on this side of the river. Now, another crew had left half an hour earlier, and we were worried about them. What happened to them? Anyway, we walked through the marshy part. We managed to get to the kitchen in took us about an hour and a half. When we got there, the main question on everybody's lips was, how is Osho going to drive? Because there's no bridge. And so all kinds of solutions were offered, and this was a major concern. How is Osho going to go on his morning drive and his afternoon drive? He can't get to the main road, to the county road.